There's more to reviewing movies than you can see. Let's talk about Hollow Man.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are back, the Eye of the Storm podcast. Danny G, please let the people know what we're going to be discussing or debating today.
So, this is Have You Seen, in which we talk about a movie that some of us know well and others have just seen for the first time. This week, we are talking about the 2000 science fiction horror movie Hollow Man, which follows the story of a group of scientists led by Dr. Sebastian Kane, who are working on an invisibility serum for the military. When their project is close to being cancelled, they start cutting corners and they test a new prototype that is very promising, but that on paper should still require more research. They inject that into Dr. Kane, which turns him invisible. And the story then unfolds from there. So Hollow Man is one of those movies that I've never really been that much into it. Like, it's not like it's one of my favorite movies or anything like that. It's more like when I was getting into movies in the early 2000s, 2003, 4, 5, Hollow Man was always there. Like, it was kind of on the shelf, it was in the rotation. If you were interested in like a fun action movie or you wanted to see like a sci-fi movie, Hollow Man was high on the list for us. And it had big names in it, and it was fun, it was action packed, it was entertaining, and it was just one of those movies that kind of made its way into our viewing rotation over and over again. But you just saw this for the first time. So what's your takeaway from Hollow Man?
Hollow Man, the invisible pervert. I'll be honest with you, I wasn't expecting the film to go that route. So it definitely caught me by surprise. And I've seen this movie around, like I've seen the posters and stuff. So I thought it had some sort of cultural influence when it comes to movies, the film industry. I don't know. That's kind of like a question. Has it, Daniel? Did it?
I don't know. I think it's just one of those movies that people know and people generally like. I don't know that it's that big of a classic.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll start by saying I liked it, but it annoyed me. But I liked it. It feels like it. The way that it was told was simple, and the signs, like for example, like the signs were shown in the beginning of the film of what kind of a threat he would be, but I didn't realize. And obviously, once the story's been told, it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Like it was so clear and obvious in a way. I'll be honest with you, the reason why I kind of like not dismissed the first scene, but I dismissed it because I thought, okay, that's just the way times were back in the day. Because back in the day, it was very cancel culture wasn't as present as it is now. So a lot of the stuff you would say was. I don't know, like the old generation would call us sensitive, is what I'm trying to say. So I thought stuff like that back in the day was like normal. You know what I'm saying? That was the norm. It wasn't really inappropriate in a way. So I didn't really pay attention to it when he is spying on the woman getting changed.
Right.
Yeah,
So
that's
he looks out, like he's working on like on the formula, and he looks out the window, and his neighbor is kind of just walking around to her apartment, kind of essentially in her underwear, and he kind of spies on her for a little bit,
yeah.
which is foreshadowing like what will happen later on in the movie.
Exactly. But when I'll be honest with you, at first I was like, his perverted urges kind of like I felt like, it came out of nowhere. That was my first thought. But then I was like, oh no, it didn't. No, it actually didn't. Like this makes sense because when he first turned invisible and then I thought this was random, but the scientist that he kept on having arguments with, I forgot her name. She had like red hair.
I think that's Sarah.
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure now, but yeah, like there's one of the team members who like really hates his guts.
Yeah, when he started like unbuttoning her shirt when he was invisible, I was like, "Wait, where the hell did this come from?" That's when I was like, "This is just so random." Like, this is his villain moment, and his villain moment is being a pervert. So that's why I was a bit confused. But I was like, "Oh, okay." I clocked back into the beginning scene, so I was like, "Okay, cool." So I feel like this film was simply told, and I liked it. It was, and I think why I liked it even more was because it was raw. So it was, even though like it was a simple film, it was backed by its rawness in terms of its aesthetic, like the VFX for like when the body would disappear. I thought it looked amazing. That actually looked amazing. I was like, oh crap, that really looked amazing. And just the rawness in terms of like people getting beaten up and dying, and the tearing of the skin. Like when forgot her name, but the other scientist, his ex-girlfriend, was climbing up the ladders. And then obviously the elevator dropped down, and then the way her skin just peeled off, I was like, oh crap, I don't know why, that just looked good. So this was a very raw film. So yeah, I was like, okay, I really like surprised. I really like this film. I didn't expect it to go this raw. However, what really annoyed me was just the emotional denseness, if that's a word. That is a word. Just they were emotionally dense. They were very emotionally dense to moments. Whereas like it kind of annoyed me. Like for example, when the black girl scientist died, they were kind of like bland about it. And then other moments as well when what was another moment?
I think she's a lab tech, right? Is that right?
Yeah.
I think so. But anyway, like she when they discover that she's dead, like the reason they don't dwell on it is because he could be anywhere. And so they have to stay alert.
I get that, but there's even other moments as well, like other people are dying too, where it just felt like there wasn't even any emotion behind it. Even when the guy, right, the Hollow Man was kind of like with his ex-girlfriend was kind of like being very inappropriate. She just seemed, I don't know, she just seemed like ditzy, even though she's not ditzy, she's a scientist. I'm like,
So I think he keeps making inappropriate remarks, right? That were inappropriate even in 2000. And she kind of just tells him to get lost, but she never does anything about it. She doesn't fight back. She doesn't complain. She doesn't get HR involved if there's an HR, right? So is that what you mean?
kind of, but like for example, there was a scene when he was, I forgot what scene it was. I think this was his last attempt to kind of like get her to sleep with him, was when he pinned her to the wall. But that, like, you remember that scene? He pinned her to the wall.
Yeah.
They were kind of arguing, yeah, in that scene. Like, I don't know. She just seemed very like, I don't know. She seemed very goofy. But there's not just those moments. There's other moments as well where they just very like they reacted just in a way where, like I said, it seemed emotionless. So that's why it kind of annoyed me. Clearly, that was intentional. The way that the way you defended that. So I'm like, okay, cool. If that's intentional, I just didn't enjoy it the way that it was, done.
So in those situations, I think what's going on in her mind is he's doing it again, right? Like that's
Yeah.
like she's used to this. There's a reason why they broke up, and she has to work with him because there's probably no other game in town. And he just keeps doing stuff like this to her and to others, right? And there's just no recourse. Like he will never stop, and she can't make him stop. And so she just tells him to back off and hopes he does. And the reason she reacts, she behaves in that way, is because this is not the first time this has happened. So I don't think she's unemotional or anything like that. It's got to do with he just does that all the time.
Even with the other girls, because even the way that they responded was a bit ditzy as well, because obviously he was inappropriate with them and they know that he was like...
So ditzy is not the right word. Ditzy means stupid.
No, but that's what I'm saying. I know ditzy means stupid, but they seemed very goofy. Like the way that they were just acting seemed very stupid. That's what, and which is like is a contradiction to their profession. That's why I was a bit shocked. I'm like, you guys are acting very slow and you're acting like you're just... You know what's going on. You know he's spying on you on the toilets. You know he unbuttoned your shirt.
Well, they don't know. They suspect.
They know
they
it.
Can't actually prove it.
Each time they will look around the room and they will put on their glasses and even had a conversation about urges and natural and their nature. I get it, they suspected it, but still, it's not just like sexual advancements, inappropriate sexual advancements, the way that they were acting it that was annoying, like that was throwing me off. It was other stuff. Even with the way the guy was acting sometimes, the other scientist guys, they were just, sometimes they just had moments where I was just like, okay, just seems very emotional like this. But yeah. But besides that, it was good.
So the thing about when one of them is on the toilet and she thinks he's in the room, she puts on the infrared goggles and she looks around and he's not there. Right? So she suspects it, she kind of expects it, but she didn't catch him. And then the other thing, when he sneaks into the room and assaults this other scientist while she's sleeping, I think that is the scene where he rigged the security camera so it looks like he was in his room the entire time. So she can't prove anything. She has a weird feeling, but she can't prove it, and she can't prove it to anybody else. So that is why they don't do anything about it. And in general, they act the way they do because it's a professional environment and they have to work with him and he's the boss and they can't pick a fight with him, right? They can't complain to anybody. They have to either leave or deal with it. And that is why they are kind of half-heartedly like pushing back against it, but there's just nothing they can do. And in addition to that, I think a lot of it is just them being professional in terms of like, not this particular part, but the part where they behave in very reserved or calm ways and not very emotional ones, even a crisis. I actually kind of appreciated that, and that was going to be one of the things to bring up about this movie, which is that they are intelligent professionals. They don't behave like high schoolers. And I think if you're used to modern movies when nobody is professional, when nobody acts like an adult, watching like an older movie like this, where people act the way professional adults would act in a crisis, I think it can come across as cold or unemotional or understated or even boring. But this is how adults behave in a difficult situation, I think.
I hear what you're saying, and I get that. It's just what threw me off was them having a conversation in that room about a man's nature and sexual urges and stuff. So that was like confirmation to me that they know that he's doing what he's doing. So that's why I was like, okay, they know this. and the way that they were responding to this. I do get everything that you're saying, especially like I understand how it's like especially with women, they can be comfortable in the situation, so they're not going to, they're not going to react a way that you think that they're going to react. Sometimes they can just be cold, like they can just be frozen in those certain situations.
I've kind of been in similar situations at work where somebody senior to me is behaving in appropriate ways. Not necessarily a boss, like a direct boss, but just somebody who's senior to me in the company.
Mhm.
And I think it's wrong what they're doing. Might be a comment, might be just how they're behaving, whatever. And it can be a wide variety of contexts, but you just don't pick a fight. You just stay quiet and wait until it's over. That's just how that is.
But that's the thing though. Like I get that, but the way that their relationship dynamic was, he was always arguing with that other girl. So it wasn't like she acknowledged his seniority when it comes to, I'm saying, when the hierarchy of power. It seems like she would, I'm saying, she would go toe to toe with him. So that's why, especially the other girl as well, and all three scientists seem like the relationship was equal, even though you could tell like he kept on reminding him that he was the boss at times. So I get that, but the way that they would go at him sometimes, like argue with him and stuff, I was like, okay, so there's this type, there's pretty much free will in this company where you can talk to anyone any way you want to. So that's why I was a bit thrown off with the way that they were reacting. But like I said, I'm not trying to dismiss the fact that when you are in a situation where you're being like, for example, around someone that's behaving inappropriately and they're your superior, I definitely understand how you can freeze in those moments. It's just specific moments such as the conversation and the relationship dynamic that kind of threw me off.
Just in general, I think it follows from them being professionals and acting in a calm and rational manner in general, right? Like throughout the crisis and whenever, like as they're determining whether Sebastian is actually the threat and what he's doing and what they need to do to stop him and to survive. I kind of always got the feeling that they were being pretty rational about it, and they were just analyzing the situation and figuring out what they need to do. So they were not overly emotional, and they were not being guided by their emotions, and it didn't turn into like a dramatic scene. And I think maybe that is what was missing for you. But for me, I felt it refreshing because this just like we've talked about this before, where in the last 10, 20 years, a lot of movies just are not written, like characters are not written like professional adults in general, like in any situation. And they often behave in ways that are too emotional, too dramatic. The intent is to have like a heartfelt speech as opposed to watching somebody like walk through a problem. And I do like whenever I go back to a movie that's like this is not that old, right? Like we said the same thing about The Thing from like that's almost 20 years older than this, and it can seem cold and clinical, but it comes down to these are professionals working through a problem, and they realize that if they make a mistake, they can get killed or there can be dire consequences, and that is why they behave the way they do. And I find it refreshing. I find it more engaging than watching people kind of like disintegrate at the first sign of trouble, which is what you get from almost all movies.
Mm-hmm.
All right, moving on. Like you mentioned earlier that the effects are spectacular in this, right? So this had a budget of $95 million back in 2000, and a solid half of that was reserved for the special effects. And I think they even developed dedicated technologies, like that scene where Sebastian is injected the invisibility formula and he turns invisible from the outside in, right? So his skin disappears, then his fat disappears, then his muscles disappear, and right, and until he's completely invisible. As far as I know, that was like a custom software that had to be created to be as detailed and as accurate as it could possibly be. I think it's the most breathtaking shot in the entire movie. Like there are other good ones, but I think that is the one that really shows you, okay, this movie tries, right? Like it really wants to go the extra mile and it wants to take the invisibility thing seriously, which I think is exactly the right thing for this kind of movie, because if you get that wrong, then the entire movie falls apart. And I feel like invisibility can be half-assed very easily, where it's just the guy's not there. And what they apparently did, I read up a little bit on this, like they filmed every scene twice, once with Kevin Bacon in it and once not, and they kind of edited him out so that like all the actors' reactions would be as realistic as possible and they're not acting into a void. Like it's stuff like this, right? So they really try to make this as real as possible. And personally, I always felt it was real. Like I always suspended my disbelief and said, yeah, if there's an invisible guy rampaging around, this is how it would be, and this is how people would react, and this is what they could come up with to kind of stop him and fight him. All these little details, and also like the things about the invisible gorilla in the beginning, You don't just see stuff being moved by an invisible thing. You always pan to the infrared cameras, and that kind of gives you an idea of what's actually going on, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's all very carefully constructed to make the invisibility work as well as possible, as it possibly could. And I don't think I've ever seen it better in any movie, like even modern ones.
Yeah, I can't remember any invisible movies, but I will definitely say I appreciate so much that they actually did the whole layers of the body peel away rather than just the person like disappearing. Well, obviously, when I first saw that baboon scene, I was like, flipping out. This is just so raw. And it looks so great too. So it's not the fact that it looked great, it's just the way that it was done was, I just don't know how to describe that experience. So it just felt, it was just so good watching. So that was worth every penny, is what I'm trying to say. That was worth every penny. So I don't really have much to say on this besides I had a great, like, that was a great experience. I don't think I've ever seen VFX that good before in a movie.
I mean, you get better stuff, right? Like Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, for instance, looked really
No, but
good.
not like that. I mean, sorry, not like that. But I just mean, obviously, the purpose of VFX in that moment was, layers of the body peeling away. Just in this, of course, like in terms of like a whole production and like seeing the Planet of the Apes, yeah, 100, yeah, it looks good. But I mean, in a scene, seeing VFX being used the way that it was used, I don't think I've seen something as better as that. The way that they captured that moment using VFX, and the way that VFX was used in that moment, I don't think I've seen a greater moment in cinema.
It's the small details, right? Like there's 1,000 little details that they get right in this, right? Instead of creating massive worlds or massive spectacle, it's just one guy and the impact of one guy on his environment. And we also get a whole bunch of different versions of this, right? Like we get outright invisibility, we get him essentially in a sheet, we get him with a latex mask. We get things like at one scene he's covered with blood, in another one he's pushing through fog, in another one somebody is using a fire extinguisher to make him visible. There's different variations, like that little scene where he's in the car, and
Yeah.
in the car next to him there's like kids, like, and they're kind of messing with him, and so he takes off his sunglasses and he shows and while he's wearing the latex mask and sunglasses, and he takes off the sunglasses, and it's just a hollow thing.
Mhm.
It's just a very small thing, and it's not like no other movie has ever pulled off an effect like this. But it's I don't know, for whatever reason, it comes across as real in that moment. I really suspend my disbelief here, where yeah, there's just an invisible guy running around. Like I buy it, like I'm on board with it, and that means that everything else in the movie is more effective. If you are constantly reminded that you're watching a special effect, it's not gonna be impactful. But what I think this movie does really well is to make this world believable, right? Like make it believable that this is a situation in which there really is a guy who's invisible. I can't point to, okay, this is the mistake that all the others make, and this is what this got right. But somehow this just works better than otherwise. For instance, when, like, if I'm watching a movie or a show and there's an invisible character and they show the character kind of bump into things and so things start moving by themselves, I know that's a special effect, right? Like I'm reminded of it in that moment and it looks like a special effect. And in Hollow Man, for whatever reason, it feels more real, and I can't quite point to why that is. I think the biggest contributing factor is that they just pay attention to little details about how every little thing moves and how he moves and how he behaves. And I think that just makes it, like, pushes it over the finish line.
I think because we saw him peel away right in front of our very eyes, that left an impression on us where, like, because we saw him literally turn invisible layer by layer. So because of such an impact, each thing that he would do is just more impactful. That's what I'm saying. Because, like I say, first impressions are very important. So if the first impression that we got was seeing him just disappear, I think it wouldn't really have much of an impact if objects were moving. What they did with that VFX and how the procedure, actually how they showed us the procedure, I think that's the reason why it just felt more realer. But what would you say though? I got two things. The first thing is actually a good thing, and the second thing could be a possible critique. The good thing is, this was the first time where I said to myself, I was watching him as a villain, and I said to myself, his significance could have been if it was turned into a franchise, for example, or just if there was more movies about him. I was just getting Joker vibes from him. I don't know why. I think it was like just the evil acts he was doing and just the rawness behind it, and obviously the way that he transitioned from a genius to a psychopath. I just think his story could have gone on, and I'm just a bit annoyed. I hope I don't know how you would bring back his story. Maybe you would like do a remake and then create sequels out of that. But I think his character as a villain was just so fascinating to watch. Just the way that it all happened, and I just wanted to see more of him. So I'm a bit annoyed that they didn't kind of like develop his character even more. So that's just one thing.
Yeah, there is a Hollow Man 2, and I've not seen it.
Okay. But him in like a Marvel movie or like a DC movie, him as a villain would be, well, not even like one of those movies, but like something like like I could see him go against Batman, and his character would be, it would be crazy. He just fits in that type of universe.
Yeah. I mean, there are invisible characters in like in superhero movies and whatever, and I can't off the top of my head think of an invisible villain.
Mm.
I don't know. I can name a whole bunch of invisible heroes, but I can't name invisible villains.
Not necessarily because of his superpower of being invisible, but mainly just him as a villain. The way that he performed his character, I just would love to see him up against a Batman, for example.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Or even in a Deadpool movie, he would be such a great villain. Just the way that he was acting. I'm gonna check out Hollow Man 2. Actually, I'm sure that means it must be like a whole different character because I'm sure that he died. Like the guy burnt in fire. Unless I don't know how he would have survived that, but
So actually, I just looked it up, and actually, this character, if you look up invisible supervillains, he's like the second one, and the first one in the list is the Invisible Man from the H.G. Wells story, the story that all of these are based on. And you have to scroll down to some really obscure ones, like Gentleman Ghost is apparently invisible. And there's a character called Invisible Kid, and another, like a group of villains called the Invisible Mafia, which I've never heard of. So there does not appear to be a prominent supervillain that is invisible. And I don't know why. Like, it's so obvious. Like, it writes itself. And having to fight, like, I actually don't believe this list is just what Google brings out when you search for invisible supervillain. There must be some, but it's so an obvious villain power, right? Because like it's like even the heroes, like the first thing they do is kind of spy on somebody and like changing or something like that, right? Like, or spy on somebody they're not supposed to look at. Like, it seems to me like an invisible hero, a lot of the time, the first thing they will do is do something villainous, and then, or they're about to do it, and then they pull back because they're actually a good person.
Yeah.
But when I just looked it up, I thought clearly there must be like 20 supervillains who are invisible, and I'm just blanking on them, and it does not appear to be the case. So that's a little bit weird. And in terms of the Joker, I think what Kane has in common with the Joker is that he's an agent of chaos, that he just does things because he wants to do them, and nobody can stop him, and he basically dares the entire world to stop him. So in that way, I think they're fairly similar. And like a series of movies, or at least like even the sequel seems to be like a standalone sequel. It's not the continuation of that same character. It's a different Invisible Man, essentially. And they're played by a different actor, played by like just being a different person, right? In a different story, unrelated story. So I think you could absolutely turn this into a villain if you wanted to, or like a recurring villain who does just horrible things because he can, right? And I think that would be a really cool character.
So it looks like it could be an opening since there isn't that much invisible villains in movies. So yeah, that would be, I would be down, because like you said, like they would, as soon as they turn invisible, the first thing they'll do a lot of the times is do things that they shouldn't do. So
like once, and then they realize, oh, I shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah. So yeah, that is pretty much, that would be fun to watch. But I was gonna say though, do you feel like the rules of invisibility kind of changed a few times, mainly with the whole thermal vision? Because it's like, are we supposed to be able to see them with thermal glasses? Because did it feel like the rules were changing to serve the plot? Is what I'm trying to say.
Not that I noticed.
You don't think so? And what about with, actually, no, you can put. Actually, can you? Because if someone goes invisible, physically, they're not there anymore. So them wearing clothes.
Well, depends. So if it's just about light passes through them, then they're still there. Right? And that is the whole thing about using liquids, or like a common one in movies is flour, right? You can just spread flour, like disperse a bunch of flour around the room, and that will stick to the person, and that's how they become visible again. So now that you mention it, I think there's one thing that is maybe not as clear as it could be, which is in the beginning, he says he can't sleep because his eyelids don't block out the light anymore.
Yeah.
And that should mean that he can't see because his eye doesn't capture light anymore.
Yeah.
So why can he see? So I don't think the science of this checks out at all in terms of, like, he would just not be able to see, for instance.
Yeah.
And, like everything else should still work, right? Touch and hearing and all of that should still work. It seems to me like you shouldn't be able to see. I think that gets discarded, even the part where even if you accept just the rules as stated. In the beginning, he says he can't sleep because, like, even if he closes his eyes, the room is still too bright. But then that stops being an issue later in the movie. And off the top of my head, I don't think that is addressed. I don't think he just learns to deal with it. It just stops being an issue. So maybe they hand wave that a little bit in terms of like how he operates. But the thing about the heat is like his body is still the same, like it still gives off heat. And that is why they can see it. And that only stops working when he cranks up the heat so that his body temperature matches the room temperature. And that's where the infrared goggles can't detect him anymore.
Okay, cool.
Right? So outside of that, I think it checks out.
Okay, cool. I won't argue with that.
So I think we kind of danced around it earlier a little bit, and I think we are on the same page that this movie just really sells you on its idea in the first 20 minutes, and then you are on board, and then you are with these characters when things get more serious, right? Is that fair?
Yeah.
So I kind of paid attention to it a little bit more this time, and I think first of all, a lot of movies I bounce off of, like when we watch a current movie and I'm not feeling it. A lot of the time, I will kind of struggle to point exactly to what it is that I can't connect to, and often it isn't like, oh, this just makes no sense at all, or this is like this part is so broken, or this performance is so bad, or whatever. A lot of the time, it comes down to how it feels. And I'm always interested in why a movie works and why it doesn't. Because a lot of the times, like, it's not like movies are not a formula, right? Where if it just does these three things, then it works. Like, if that was the case, then Hollywood would have figured that out and all their movies would work, right? They would all be amazing. And clearly that's not the case. A lot of the time, whether or not a movie works comes down to just random luck. Like, do the pieces come together and does it hit a nerve with the audience? And a movie can do everything right and still not pull this off, right? So I do think that is a thing that happens with movies. And so whenever a movie really does work, it can be interesting to kind of figure out what did this do that the others didn't. And my answer to this is that it's really strong in the first half hour or so about establishing all the things you need to know in order to get the movie and get on board with the movie and make a connection with the story and the characters. I think it spends about half an hour or so very carefully introducing the characters and the pressure they're under, right? So you have this whole research program that is on the verge of being canceled because they have not produced results. And they are basically working around the clock. And Kane seems to be like this massive genius, and even he is struggling, right? And the others don't even get that close. That is why we see him working in his apartment in the beginning, trying to come up with a stable formula, and everything he tries doesn't work. And he's close to kind of just giving up and burning out. So it does a really good job introducing like his temperament and the problem that this team faces and what the conflict is, right? And then it also establishes the tech, because we have that scene where I think it's Matt. He cares for the animals that have been treated, right? They're like the test animals. And when they introduce kind of this gorilla that has been made invisible, who then gets out of the cage, like every step of that, like is very careful to establish, okay, they're working, like I think up until that point, we don't know that they're working on invisibility, if I remember correctly. Like there's this reveal of you have an invisible gorilla in a cage, and you're getting all sorts of clues and details to show what is going on and why this is dangerous and why the project, like their research is stalled, right? About how it makes the animals aggressive and they don't have a way of bringing them back, and that's the part that doesn't work, and so on, right? And then when the gorilla gets out of her cage, how difficult it is to deal with just something invisible that doesn't want to be caught, right? Which is foreshadowing the entire conflict of Acts 2 and 3, right? So it is stuff like that. And they also establish the tech very clearly, where they go through like all the different testing and kind of the routine that they have, where you have a very clear idea of what tech do they have and what can it do and how do they work and all of that, right? So that's just a long-winded way of saying it spends a lot of time putting all the different pieces into place so that you have a very clear idea of what is going on, who these people are, what they're working with, what they're trying to do, and why they're struggling. And so when they then have the success that turns Kane invisible, we are on board at that point and we kind of are with them already. And then the movie takes us on a ride for the rest of the movie, I think. I think that's why that works.
Yeah, I will agree. The setup was definitely great. I think as well introducing like juicy topics that people love to watch. Like you got the whole obviously relationship between the two scientists, and then obviously so you got a relationship with them, but it's obviously a hidden relationship, and obviously you're wondering why is it a hidden relationships, and then once you start seeing his story developed, the main character, you're like, okay, makes sense. Especially now you can see the type of person that he is, and to give this type of power with him, you could just imagine what's going to happen. So like I said, I think definitely yes, the stakes, just the setup in general, I would definitely agree with you. It was good. It feels, but I keep saying it was simply done, but I don't mean it.
I think the word you're looking for is elegant.
Yeah, so yeah, I could say that the layout was elegant. That's a good way of saying it. Yeah, elegant was a good way, because we've seen other movies where pieces are here, they're all over the place. It's very complex, but this didn't feel like a complex movie.
Yeah, it's pretty simple when you come down to it, but it accomplishes a lot. Like what I mean by elegant is it accomplishes a lot with very few pieces.
Mm.
And there's just a couple of lines, even Linda, like that scene where Kane calls Linda at like in the middle of the night because he's had a breakthrough, and she hides who's in who's in her bed in the background, right? So they have like a video call and her bed is in the background, and Matt, right, the other scientist from the team who she's having a relationship with, is in the bed sleeping, and he's asked, hey, who's with you, because, and so on, right? And she then turns the angle of the webcam, which honestly is like a very 2026 move, right? Like anybody who's been on Teams meetings and Zoom meetings in the last couple of years has figured out what the perfect angle is so that you reveal as much or as little information about your environment as you wanted to, right? Like there's a reason I'm not showing you my sink, right? Like that's off to the angle here, right? So that's just like 2 lines. And that tells a lot about Linda's and Kane's history, right? And then they have a conversation about what a genius he is and about how overworked they all are, that which sets the scene, right? And that again is like 3 lines. And then after the call, Linda and Matt have a conversation about things like, or should we take separate cars, or should we continue hiding, hiding our relationship from the team, and so on, which just in a couple of lines tells a lot about what kind of situation they're in, right? At the same time, they're also giving us exposition about the science. So I actually think this is very elegant, very efficient, very masterful screenplay, like a screenwriting, because it conveys a lot of information in just very few lines. And like there's no big scene where, like, there is some exposition in this, but there isn't a lot where they have to stop the story for 10 minutes or 5 minutes even to explain to us the science, because the science is bullshit. We just need to understand what are they trying to do and what are the pressures they're under and like what's the conflict, right? And I think it is very effective at bringing all of that across, which is not a given for movies. Like so many movies would have taken 2 or 3 or 4 times as long to convey the same information. And here it's almost offhand comments, but they're all very surgically placed and very optimized to tell you as much as possible in as few words as possible. And I think that's just good writing.
Yeah, no. I agree. I agree.
And all of that then means you're not bored, right? You're not drifting off. You're not doing some laundry while they get to the plot, right? There's stuff happening from the beginning, even though he doesn't turn invisible until, I didn't time it, but it's like probably half an hour in. There's no invisible man in your Invisible Man movies for half an hour, and you're not bored. It's the main thing.
As I say, the story was great. That could have been a movie without the invisibility if they really wanted to.
Yeah, it's interesting enough by itself, but it all leads to something, right? Like every scene, every line pushes you towards the point where you know you're here for the invisible guy turning into a slasher villain, right? But it'll take you a little bit to get there, but it's not boring. And I just wanna, it sounds so obvious, but so many movies don't get this right. So many movies would have spent so much more time on the relationship stuff, where like it gets tedious after a while. And yeah, we get it, but they're still going on and they're still talking about the feelings. It's like, no, we get it. Like, give us 2 lines that tells us they used to be together and they didn't work out, and it's because of Sebastian's temperament and personality. That meant Linda wants to get away from him as far as possible, but she has to work with him, and that is the conflict. And that is then reinforced at various points, like every time they're alone. The way he talks to her reinforces, like sheds additional light on why it is that Linda wanted out of that relationship, right? But it's said, like it's established in the second scene in like 2 lines. And I think that's cool. And I think all of that helps with getting us on board with the premise and getting us interested in these characters so that we are on board when the action starts.
Yeah. No, you're right.
So another thing that a lot of time is spent on is on the whole morality aspect of it and why Sebastian does what he does and how he does it and why and so on. And it has to do with this idea that basically morality is, I don't know who this quote is from, but there's like this quote that morality is what you do when nobody's watching. It's one thing to behave well when other people are watching you, but if you're doing the right thing, like in a room alone, that's the difference between a moral person and an immoral person, is the idea, right? And I don't know that that's like the whole story, but I think there's a lot of truth in this. And this movie is using the Invisible Man as an example of this. Like, how would people behave if there were no consequences? If you could do whatever you wanted and nobody could trace it back to you. And somebody like Cain would do terrible things to other people. And he would just treat the world as a playground and everybody else is just there for his gratification. But he doesn't even just have fun, right? He has to take out his moods on other people and he has to use them as a tool for what he wants.
Yeah.
Right? Like in more ways than one. Once he gets invisible, he just stops caring about anybody else. Which means when he was visible, the only reason he behaved as like a decent human being is because other people were watching and they could have punished him for doing the wrong thing. And that is no longer true, and that is why he becomes a villain.
It was kind of like good to see. There was even like internal conflict. He was trying to control what power can do to you. So he was kind of like trying to tame it, especially with the scene where he was looking at the girl from across the street, and when he was invisible, he told himself, "No, don't do it." But then he was like, "Who would know?" But you know what I'm saying? But just that moment there where he's trying to tame that urge, knowing damn well that he can get away with it and knowing damn well that he's got the power to do whatever he wants to do. That scene, I just really liked it because he tried to control it. But like you said, power is just like when you have power, it's just sometimes it's just an uncontrollable urge that you get to want to do just to be free in a way without consequences. So yeah, that scene for me was really good at capturing that moment.
Yeah, I think that's more of a realization at that point that he doesn't have to hold back anymore. He doesn't have to keep himself in check anymore. He can just do it, right? It seems to me like this is something he's wanted to do all along. But he said, "Well, I'm not doing, like, I'm gonna get caught. And I'm gonna go to prison, and that's gonna ruin my life. So I'm gonna restrain myself." And now he realizes that is no longer true. Now there are no consequences, and that's all it takes. Like, one of my questions was going to be: is his character arc for becoming a villain good enough? Is it detailed enough? Does it show the internal argument enough and that sort of thing? Because one of my pet peeves in movies is that movies skip steps where they show that a character has changed, but they don't show the moment of him changing. And what I've landed on with this movie is that he doesn't change. He just realizes that he doesn't have to hold back anymore. He doesn't have to keep himself in check anymore. And then once he starts doing things like first of all, messing with other people, but then also assaulting his neighbor and all of that, each time it works and he gets away with it and nobody can prove anything to him and there's no consequences. Like, one more layer, one more safeguard falls away. And then by the end, when he actually turns into the slasher monster, like, they're all gone and he's just pure unrestrained instinct. And he does things he's always wanted to do, but he's now unlearned all the rules of society because they don't apply to him anymore. So I've kind of landed on he doesn't change, and so there doesn't need to be a moment of change. There just has to be a realization and the reinforcement of the realization that there are no consequences anymore, and so the rules don't apply anymore to him. And that's all it takes.
So the way that he was behaving, because at first I thought it was due to some sort of scientific side effect from what he was being injected with, the invisible dose. Because I think they mentioned something about how he's starting to get more aggressive, and obviously they got that observation from the test subject of the ape. So the way that he was acting, was it just purely him just being an asshole and obviously being in a position of abuse of power, or was there some sort of side effect?
So I think it's two things. One is he always was an asshole, right? And his history with Linda shows this. Every time he's alone with Linda or even alone with anybody, he suddenly shows his true colors, right? In one way or another. And I think that is there from the beginning and just gets worse and worse over the course of the movie. I do remember there being talk about how the animals kind of become aggressive and violent over time. And that does, like, I think it is said that that is a side effect of the treatment that they're trying to get rid of. But it doesn't seem to be the reason why he becomes what he becomes.
Okay. For me, I think that you're right. He's always been an arsehole. However, I do think the dose kind of amped it up to a point where it became uncontrollable. So, like, you're right, he's always been an arsehole, he's always been a pervert, always been an abuser. However, I don't know. I can't really say that. I don't know if without the dose, if it would have happened, or like not necessarily the invisible dose, but like whatever's in that dose, the ingredients in that dose. I think if that wasn't injected in him, would he still have done what he would have done? Because obviously there are people within the position of power who aren't invisible that do the things that he's doing. So I'm just trying to imagine him in a scenario where he's not invisible, but he's still allowed to do what he's doing because he's a very powerful man. Would he still do that, is what I'm trying to say, without the actual dose?
I don't think the drug makes him do these things. I think the drug just, or like the condition of being invisible just removes the checks and balances that society puts on him. And that is when like a tendency to be an abuser becomes his dominant trait. Because he's like, every time we see him, or it is implied that he's abused somebody or just been, not like has been just harsh with people, whatever it is, right? It doesn't seem like he abused everybody, right? But he always acts in impulsive ways, in inconsiderate ways, in selfish ways. He doesn't care about the perspectives or well-being of other people at all at any point, but it's always kind of held in check, and that falls away throughout the movie, I think.
Well,
And I think at some point he also reaches a point of there's no turning back now. Like, now I'm so committed to this that I have to kill these people and then disappear into the night, and then I can live completely free for the rest of my life. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like that seems to be kind of his journey. And I kind of wish it was just a little bit more explicit in terms of showing the steps. But I think there's enough there to make sense. It's not like he's a normal person and then a switch flips and he becomes like a monster, right? It's not like this, right? Like, all the traits that are on display in the end are there from the beginning. And nobody's really surprised when he starts abusing his invisibility, right? Like, they all kind of say, yeah, we kind of saw this coming. We kind of like, of course, Sebastian is like this. Like, of course, he's going to exploit his powers, right?
Yeah. Well, if that was the case, then they should be more against it then.
But he's the boss. He's the boss, and it is his formula. And if they don't do this, then the project will get cancelled. And they all lose all their jobs, and they don't get to be the ones who go down in history as having invented invisibility.
I hear that.
Right? So that is what's at stake, and that's why they do this. But they all have reservations. Like, none of them are gung-ho about this. None of them are shocked when it starts going bad. Like, everybody has had their concerns. But they did it anyway because it was dead or nothing.
That's understandable.
About the ending, a lot of movies, I think, have the problem, especially sci-fi movies, where the first half, where we're introduced to the big concept and the world, and that's usually the most interesting part. Then the second half turns into a big action sequence, like a chase or a fight or something, and it stops being specific, and it kind of turns into any other action movie, right? A lot of the time. And it's like, this kind of does this, right? Like, yeah, like, it's still all specific to they're fighting an invisible monster, but it is basically one big extended, like, the last act is basically one big extended action sequence where it's like different variations of them trying to stop him, and kind of try a bunch of ways to do this, and like, there's setbacks and people get killed and so on, right? And there's like big CGI sequences, like the thing about the elevator, which I think is a pretty cool one, but it is, in the end, it comes down to action.
Yeah.
How did that work on you? Did you think, like, was that still exciting, or was it a little bit like any other movie?
I don't think it was like any other movie, because I think this one felt a bit grim in the sense where I wasn't expecting them. Because when in movies with characters, especially if they had any relation with their their killer, it's kind of like a slow build. Whereas this one just happened in one long big moment. And it was like, damn, like, especially the way that the first girl died, the black girl, I wasn't expecting her to be dead. I was thinking, damn, you just killed her like that. And very like, well, we didn't see how he killed her, but the way she looked when she was dead, you could tell it was explicit. So there was a build up, but the killings felt very cold and heartless because he had somewhat of a relation with these guys. And by the end of it, I was like, okay, so this guy was really, he kind of like saw these guys, they were subordinates, and he didn't really feel nothing for them. Because there was even a scene as well where he mentioned when he was fighting the other guy, he said, I thought killing you would be harder, but in reality it wasn't. So that's why, that's literally what I was thinking. I thought killing these people would have been hard for you. But it didn't seem like it was, and he did it so raw, like it was very raw, and it just happened. I was thinking, damn. So it kind of took me by surprise, which is why I liked, because like I said, other movies, there's a slow build up to these type of killings when you have relations with these people. But yeah, this one, it just like happened because he's okay, I have to kill them.
Yeah, for me, I think it works. It does get a little bit samey towards the end. The elevator scene is kind of the big finale, right? And that's certainly one of the more exciting ones. And I'm not sure, like, one of the more exciting shots. And I'm not sure what I would have wanted the ending to be. Like how do you defeat an invisible man exactly? Like, what's the best way to do this? But I do think the movie still keeps like one foot on the ground in terms of how can we make an invisible monster interesting? And they do keep coming up with complications and new ways, and the characters keep finding ways, like the blood on the floor, to make sure he has to step in the blood and that reveals him. which leads to a very interesting visual where there's like blood splattered on half his body, which I think is a really cool shot. And then like there's the fire extinguisher thing where he has to walk through the shot, and I think the sprinklers go off at one point. I think there's an underwater scene where like his silhouette or his outline is shown because he displaces the water, and he's kind of barely visible. So I think they do keep it fresh and they do keep it interesting, and it doesn't turn into a generic action too much. There's maybe a little bit of that, but I think in general, I think it stays specific enough, and I think that's what I want out of a movie like this. Like, it has to matter that the monster they're fighting or the villain they're fighting is invisible.
So I was gonna say, I think I liked it as well because a lot of the times killings are done by people like this. These killings made sense because there was a scene right before where he was watching them, and obviously they pretty much said, you know what, we're gonna go to the commissioner. Enough is enough, and they were gonna turn him in. So like his killings made sense rather than it being a killing out of urges or out of just like you know what I'm saying, like I'm out of control. Like, there was a purpose behind it. The purpose behind it was keep this a secret and be free. In order to for that to happen, I gotta kill these people.
Self-preservation, right? Like it's not he doesn't just want to kill just for the sake of it. At that point, he's doing it to keep them from hunting him for the rest of his life. And in his mind, he's defending himself.
Yeah.
All right, shall we wrap it up, or do you have any other observations about Hollow Man?
Yeah, no, I think we should wrap this up. I definitely will say that I enjoy this movie, and I think this is the first time I will say that this. I'm trying to think if there was any other movies, but what I'm trying to say is this is the first time where I've believed that this film will go on the shelf. I don't know if we've done any other movie where I said that the movie will go on the shelf, but yeah, this one will definitely go on the shelf. I will rewatch this, especially with other people as well. So yeah, I had a great time watching this one, man. Good movie.
What do you think makes this different from other movies we've watched? Like, we've watched other horror movies, we've watched other science fiction movies, from everything from the 60s to the 2020s, and most of them you say, yeah, this is like, I'm glad I watched it, but I don't need to watch it again. Like, what's different about this one? It's just that much better?
Like, I wouldn't say that this was like one of the best movies I've ever seen. I just think it was like there was maturity behind it, and obviously, of course, besides the VFX and how well that was done, and like I said, the grittiness and the grimness, I think it was just a well presented film, if that makes sense. Like we mentioned before, in terms of, you said it was elegantly done. I think the layout was pretty straightforward, great. Like it just had good pieces everywhere, and it just fitted well. So it's kind of hard to answer your question, I'll be honest with you, but it's hard. It's just something about the movie which I really, really liked, and I've mentioned the different reasons and the different points why I like this movie, from the VFX to the subject matters, to the topic, to the visibility, to the way that he was acting, to the killing. So I just think with all those pieces, it just put them together is a very, very good movie.
I think the effects are phenomenal and they hold up like 25 years later. With older movies, you kind of have to just accept that this is an old movie, right? And you have to kind of just roll with how it looks. But I think this just holds up. Like, if this came out today, it would be maybe a little bit underwhelming, but it would still work, right? And nobody would bat an eye, I don't think. Especially like the scene where he becomes invisible. I think that still blows a lot of movies today out of the water. Everything else is at least a 7 out of 10, right? And I actually think the script is really tight, especially in the beginning. The performances are solid. But one of the things I have with a lot of modern movies is there will be a whole bunch of pieces I like, but then there's this one thing where I wish they didn't do this. Like, they introduce a really annoying character, or there's a major logic break in the story, or there's something, right? Like, or some stupid trope that I hate or something. And this doesn't have that, right? It's just very linear, very focused. It does one thing. They make a man invisible and he becomes evil. Go, right? That's the movie essentially. And I think if you want that one thing, it will give you that one thing, and it does it really well. And that is why I think it holds up so well on rewatch, right? Like, it's not bloated. It's not like there's nothing in it that's annoying. It just does the thing. Like, if you're in the mood for Kevin Bacon killing some people and being awful, you will get 100 minutes of that. Well, that's all it needs to do, and it does that. And I think that is why I think it holds up so well.
Yeah.
Aside from just being good.
Well, in terms of like I said, my initial reaction to some of their reaction was, I said they were emotionally dense. So of course that's, regarding their performances. So in terms of you saying that their performance was pretty much really good, I'm still going to kind of keep the same energy. Actually, no, I'm not going to keep the same energy, because you did explain, you provided justification as to why they were behaving in a certain manner in certain situations. So like I said, I'm going to rewatch this movie again anyways, because it's a really good movie. And this time I'm going to take that in mind, and hopefully my opinions will change on the way that they were performing, because I can't now agree with you after just saying that they were emotionally dense. Do you know what I'm saying? So I'm going to rewatch it again, bearing in mind everything that you said.
I don't think there's like stellar performances in this, right? Like I do think Kevin Bacon is good in this, and he really carries this, and everybody else does their job, right? Like I don't think you watch this because you've never seen performances like this, right? And it's like a life-changing experience. No, it's just good, right? It's just a 7 out of 10 across the board, right? And I think everybody does what they need to do. It's like a puzzle, and all the pieces are there, and they all fit. Is how I would describe it. That doesn't mean it's the most amazing puzzle. Like once the puzzle is assembled, it's not the most amazing image you've ever seen.
Yeah.
But all the pieces work. Like all the pieces fit. That goes a long way for a movie. Like a lot of the time, a movie just needs to do that, and then you're done.
Yeah. Okay, I agree. All right, guys. Thank you very much for tuning into today's discussion.
If you've made it this far and you like what we do, please tell a friend. And if you hate what we do, please tell an enemy.
Okay, guys. We'll catch you next time. Au revoir.
Bye-bye.